Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're taking a look at a highly relatable issue, and more importantly, a totally accessible solution. We're going to explore how we can transform our everyday textile waste into something that's not only beautiful, but incredibly useful. Yep, we're talking about old t-shirts, and the completely surprising new lives they can lead if we just, shift our perspective a little bit. It's really an exploration of how one tiny change in our daily habits can intercept an item that's literally destined for the landfill and completely rewrite its story.
So what if your old t-shirt could get a second life? To really appreciate this solution, we've got to wrap our heads around the massive macro scale of the problem. Get this, every single second, the equivalent of a garbage truck full of textiles is either landfilled or burned globally. A whole garbage truck every second. Millions upon millions of garments are just tossed out every year. We're talking mountains of forgotten, faded, and damaged shirts. And consider this, it takes roughly 2,700 liters of water to produce the cotton for just one single t-shirt. To put that into perspective, that's enough drinking water for one person for over 2.5 years. So when we toss out a faded graphic tee just because of a torn collar, we're throwing away all of those embedded resources. But what if that piece of fabric isn't actually waste at all? What if it's premium raw material just waiting to be used?
Reclaiming that material begins with a super practical first step. We call it the wardrobe audit. We're zooming in from those massive city landfills right into your own home, which is where the real work happens. It all starts with opening your closet and just pulling out those old, unused shirts. As you lay them out on a table, you aren't just cleaning out your closet, you're doing a deliberate assessment of fabric quality. You're separating the sturdy 100% cotton shirts from the synthetic polyester blends and figuring out which ones have cool patterns versus the ones that are just heavily stained. Because, as it turns out, pure cotton behaves entirely differently than synthetics when you cut and repurpose it. This whole sorting process is really a shift in mindset. You're training yourself to look past a small hole or a permanent stain and instead actively find the hidden potential in the clothes you already own.
Okay, let's dive into this, because unlocking that potential is surprisingly straightforward, and it happens right at your crafting table. First, you measure out your fabric. Then you get that incredibly satisfying crisp sound of scissors carefully cutting away the sleeves and the neckline. The absolute brilliance of this specific upcycling method is how it uses the shirt's original architecture to your advantage. Like the existing bottom hem of the shirt naturally provides this perfect, pre-reinforced base for a bag. Next comes the smooth hum of a sewing machine. With a little colorful thread, you simply stitch that bottom hem closed, and the remaining shoulder fabric naturally forms strong, durable handles. In just a few deliberate steps, you've actively crafted a highly valuable, reusable product, and you didn't even need advanced tailoring skills to do it.
The result of that little bit of craftsmanship is a stark contrast to our standard habits. On one side of the equation, we have the endless cycle of single-use plastic shopping bags. We all know them, they're flimsy, they're notoriously difficult to recycle, and a single plastic bag can take up to 1,000 years to fully decompose in a landfill. 1,000 years! On the other side, we have the beautiful, eco-friendly t-shirt tote bag. What was once an ordinary, maybe slightly faded shirt has been crafted into a stylish, high-quality, reusable tote. Because it's made of woven cotton, its tensile strength far exceeds that of a plastic grocery bag. It is definitely not going to split open when you're carrying heavy items. And honestly, the best part, a single repurposed cotton tote can replace hundreds, if not thousands, of plastic bags over its new lifespan.
So the crucial point here is that upcycling like this is far more than just a practical chore. It's an entry point into the circular economy, driven by personalization. Recycling doesn't just have to be about utility, right? It's heavily tied to self-expression. You can paint designs, add small handmade decorations, and turn a plain fabric into a completely unique statement piece. There's actually a fascinating psychological principle at play here known as the IKEA effect. That's the cognitive bias where we place a disproportionately high value on products we partially create ourselves. When a family spends an afternoon painting and modifying an old shirt into a bag, they form a real psychological attachment to it. And that attachment means they're far less likely to lose it, throw it away, or just forget it in the trunk of the car. Ultimately, this dramatically increases the lifespan of the item.
Now, what's really interesting is what happens to the shirts that didn't make the cut for a tote bag. The ones that were heavily damaged or torn during that initial wardrobe audit. Well, they aren't waste either. When you cut up heavily worn t-shirts, you actually unlock a very specific scientific advantage. Repeated cycles through the washing machine over years of wear break down the cotton fibers. This makes the fabric incredibly soft, highly absorbent, and virtually lint-free. Actually, scratch that, it makes them perform better than almost any brand new synthetic sponge or disposable paper towel you can buy at the store. These pieces make incredible, highly effective cleaning cloths for polishing wooden tables, wiping down kitchen counters, or detailing car interiors.
They leave surfaces shiny and clean, and you completely eliminate the recurring cost and environmental footprint of buying disposable cleaning products. It's a total win-win.
And this brilliantly illustrates the bigger picture. When you scale these localized actions, the macro impact of these micro choices becomes undeniable. The compounding math is actually staggering. If just one average household repurposes 10 old t-shirts a year, turning a few into grocery bags and the rest into cleaning cloths, they drastically reduce their localized waste footprint. But it goes way beyond that. They're also entirely cutting out the carbon emissions, the packaging, and the shipping associated with manufacturing and purchasing the new plastic bags and synthetic sponges they would have otherwise bought. Small, seemingly insignificant recycling habits compound rapidly across communities to dramatically reduce industrial demand, diverting massive amounts of waste and protecting our natural world in the process.
We are also seeing a massive cultural shift in how these repurposed items are perceived out in the real world. Picture a beautiful, sunlit park or a bustling weekend farmer's market. People are proudly carrying their personalized, handmade, upcycled bags. Just a decade ago, repairing or repurposing old clothes was often viewed purely as a frugal necessity. But today, it has completely shifted into a premium, sought-after sustainable lifestyle choice. You now see these types of bespoke recycled bags hanging in modern, eco-friendly boutiques as highly desired consumer products. It proves that one old t-shirt, which might have looked entirely useless, immediately becomes something of high cultural and practical value when you add just a little bit of creativity and intentionality.
Reuse, recycle, create a better future. It's a pretty simple mantra, but its application is incredibly powerful. The future of our environment isn't this abstract concept that's entirely out of our hands. It's actually heavily influenced by the daily micro habits we choose to adopt right in our own homes. Every single time we choose to wash a cotton rag instead of throwing away a paper towel, or stitch a hem instead of buying a plastic tote, we are literally casting a vote for the type of world we want to live in. A little bit of creativity and a willingness to simply rethink our existing resources can and absolutely will protect our planet for the generations that come after us.
So the next time you're cleaning out your closet or holding a faded item you're just about to toss into the trash, just pause for a second. Look at the material. Think about the embedded resources it took to create it, and ask yourself, can this have another life? Because as we've learned today, the answer is almost always yes. You have the power to rethink your discarded wardrobe and turn what would have been an environmental burden into something wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep creating, and I'll catch you next time.